When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed those who were ill. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. Bring them here to me, he said. And he told the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of the place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all surrounding country. People brought all who were ill to him, and begged him to let those who were ill just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed.
Very well, do keep those pages open. Excuse me. Page 1065. I will be referring to some of those verses as we go along. Well, let me add my welcome to Andy's. My name is Peter Walkinshaw, the pastor here, and if you are just visiting or you're here for the first time, I'd love to say hello and meet you as we enjoy a cuppa in a little while. Well, I wonder what 2026 will have in store for you. Could have some big shocks in the next 12 months. There could be some upsetting things in the next 12 months, but there could be some great joy waiting as well. There could just be the sort of daily grind of regular life. Might be some hardships among that. Who knows, there might be sudden prosperity as some long-lost relative dies and you inherit a mansion. Possibly not, but don't hold your breath for that one. But who knows? Could be some new opportunity opens up that you weren't expecting at the start of the year. Well, I wonder, as you've thought about some of those things, just as I've mentioned them, I wonder where Jesus featured in all of that for you. Possibly, if you're like me, he maybe wasn't the first thing you were thinking of when you were thinking of the new year, of the difficulties and upsets or joys and wonderful things that the year might hold. We're starting a new series on Sunday mornings, and we're returning to Matthew's Gospel. We were looking at it last year, and we left off just at the start of chapter 14, and we're coming back to it. And it's going to be really useful for us, because although the whole Bible talks of Jesus and points us to his importance. When we look at the 4 gospel accounts, and here we'll be looking at Matthew, you really get to see Jesus up close and personal. You see him in action and you hear his words. And particularly today, as we start in a new year, it's going to help us, I think, to think about how we get ready for whatever the new year holds. Now, as we resume, let me just tell you what's just happened in Matthew's Gospel. We're breaking in chapter 14, verse 13. But what has just happened, you can actually see it if you've got one of the church Bibles. The NIV has a heading at the start of the chapter. It says, John the Baptist beheaded. And Jesus has been doing some teaching, he's been helping people. And then there's been this opposition that's come, particularly Herod has arrested and then killed John the Baptist. And as our section opened in verse 13, we find out that Jesus just heard what has happened and he withdraws to a solitary place, and we find him praying. Well, as we look at what happens next and the feeding of the 5,000 and Jesus walking on the lake, what Reuben has just read to us, I've got 3 things that I particularly want us to notice from this section. So, first of all, we're going to see Jesus and events that are hard to explain away. What is going on in these 2 incidents that are recorded for us? We're going to see Jesus and events that are hard, that it's hard to cope with, and Jesus and his character and things about his character that are going to be hard to miss. So let's look at the first of those, Jesus and some events that it's hard to explain away. Well, you kind of missed, I don't think, that Jesus is feeding a large number of people. And it actually, there's a heading in the Bible that says 5,000, but that comes in verse 21 at the end of the account. It tells us how many people are there. There's 5,000 men, and then there's also women and children. So I don't know how many that is in total. It'd be easy to imagine that doubles the number, wouldn't it? But it's not clear what the percentage of male, female, or adults, children in the crowd is. But even if there was only 10 women and 2 kids or something, 5,000 people is a significant crowd, isn't it? Just to put that into perspective, I looked at what's the average attendance at home games this season at Carlisle United, and it's been 7,359. So sort of a Carlisle United crowd. Or I was thinking about an event in the middle of Carlisle, maybe something like this, switching on of the Christmas lights or something. A lot of people congregate in the middle of in the city centre there. And would that be 5,000 people? Maybe. I don't know how many people attend that. There's certainly a very large number come to the bonfire and fireworks event, isn't there? But an event in the middle of town, I'm not sure. But I would imagine 5,000 people would pack out that area, wouldn't it? It's a large crowd. And it could be significantly more than 5,000. But the point is, really, that there's no way you're going to be able to feed these people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Doesn't matter how big your fish is. You're just not going to be able to do it, are you? And so this is a creation miracle. Something is created that wasn't there. There is absolutely loads of food, enough for all of these people to eat. Now, some people, to try and explain what's going on here, say, everyone really had a packed lunch in their cool box, but they weren't letting on about it. There was just some idiot who'd let on that they had some loaves of fish, but everyone else was just keeping it quiet. And when they see, some food's happening, everyone gets their packed lunch out. But I don't think that's credible. The disciples are convinced that the need is genuine in verse 15. And in John's account of the same thing, and you can read this in John 6, verse 14 and 15 there, as a result of Jesus providing this food, the crowd, not the disciples, the crowd want to make Jesus king. They're amazed at what they've just experienced. The crowd are. They're not thinking, oh yeah, we just snuck it out of the cool box. So there's a miraculous thing happening here. And just by the very nature of what it is personally experienced by each one of those 5,000 plus people. They physically experience the miracle, so to speak. It's not like they're just witnesses to a blind man receiving his sight or something, like many of the other miracles. All these people personally experience it. They physically receive some food and eat. And they eat enough. It's not just they all get like a little symbolic bit of fish or bread. A little bit later, we're going to be sharing the Lord's Supper together and taking bread and wine. And it's a symbolic meal, isn't it? We're not expecting that you won't have to eat again all day because of the little bit of bread we will be providing. But here, people have eaten and are satisfied, verse 20, and there's a load of leftovers as well. Some doggy baskets are some takeaway is left over. So it's hard to imagine how this can happen, isn't it? How can you feed that many people? Even if you've been able to sneak in a sandwich van or something. Just how do you feed 5,000 plus people? Just even the logistics of it are impressive. But you know, they're in the middle of nowhere. There's no provisions. If somebody said to you, in a month's time, I would like you to provide sandwiches for 5,000 people, you wouldn't be able to think about anything else between now and then, would you? I've got to feed 5,000 people in a month's time. I mean, that would be some undertaking, wouldn't it? Trying to feed 50 or 100 people or something at a wedding is quite a big undertaking. But just feeding that many people, it's an amazing thing. Who could do this? Who could do this? But that's not the only thing that happens this day that is a remarkable thing. Because later that day, verse 22 says, immediately, Jesus is walking on a lake. The disciples are crossing by boat. Jesus is praying. And then verse 25, shortly before dawn, so just hours after the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus is there walking on the lake. Again, breaking the laws of nature. What he's able to do contradicts our 100% experience of how water and humans operate, doesn't it? So never, as you've jumped into a swimming pool or into the sea or a lake or something, have you worried that you're going to bounce off. Yeah, I know you can do a kind of belly flop and sort of hurt yourself, but never have you thought, it's going to be like ice or something when I hit the surface. We just don't operate like that with water, do we? But somehow here, Jesus is not going in to the water. He's walking on the water. And even more amazing, he's able to pass on this ability to someone else. So Peter is able to join him and gets out of the boat. Can you imagine that, sitting on the edge of the boat? Peter's on the edge of the boat and he's got his legs over the side. And he's like, whoa, they're not going in. Must have been amazing. It must have been such a weird thing. But again, some people have tried to explain this away. They said, there's some sort of secret sandbar just below the water that Jesus knew about and no one else knew about. And Jesus was kind of walking on that and pretending. But of course, some of these people in the boat, some of these guys, some of the disciples are fishermen who fish in that lake. They are experts in knowing the way the lake operates. What do we call the bottom of the lake? The bed. I was going to say seabed, it's a lake, but anyway, but the bottom, right. So they know that, don't they? They know the waters, their livelihood and actually safety depend on knowing all that sort of stuff. And then, even if you explained that away, Jesus is able to stop the storm that's going on and this choppy weather. Well, the feeding of all those people, the stopping of the storm and the walking on the water, they're impossible things, but that's the whole point. That's the whole point. The reason they've been recorded by Matthew, the reason people are amazed, the reason that people are saying, who is this man, is because these things do not normally happen. They're not natural phenomena. They're not things we can explain naturally. They are hard to explain away. They're not natural, they are supernatural. They're beyond natural. So we're left asking, who can do these things? Our song that we just sung earlier picked up that idea. Who can do these things? Well, that's the first thing I want us to think about. Jesus and the events that are happening that are hard to explain away. It's a picture of pizza rather than fish and bread, but you get the picture. It's like a picnic or something. Right, second thing then. Jesus and an event that it's hard to cope with. I wonder where you turn when there are struggles, when you're facing something hard. Perhaps to family, perhaps to friends, and kind of say you're very blessed if you have friends and family that you are able to turn to. Some people don't have either of those things. But there are some situations that are beyond the help that they can give, beyond the help that friends and family or even professionals can give. Feeding people, well, it's not that difficult until you have a massive number to try and feed. And then you're thinking, where do I even start? Jesus underlines that in the incident of the feeding of the 5,000 in verse 16. Have a look at verse 16. It's 2/3 of the way down the third column. We're on page 1065. Verse 16. The disciples have spotted that there's going to be a problem. People aren't going to have food. And Jesus responds when they point this out. He said, they don't need to go away and find food. You give them something to eat. It's like, how mean is Jesus being? The disciples are like, how are we going to do that? How are we going to feed them? But Jesus is not being mean by saying you feed them. He wants them and us to think about the impossibility of sorting this out. It's impossible. It's impossible. They don't have any solution other than a couple of loaves of bread and a couple of fish, a can of sardines or something. I don't know what they've got, but they've got some small amount. It's absolutely impossible, isn't it? And some situations that we face are just beyond our ability to do anything about it. Beyond our ability to do anything about it. And here the disciples had to look to Jesus for a solution. They had to look to him for a solution. And in a similar way, when the boat is in the storm, when Peter's trying to walk on the water, they need to look to Jesus for a solution. How can you stop a storm when you're in a boat? Well, you can't. You can't. But somebody who's able to not have the normal laws of physics apply to them and who's able to walk on water, well, maybe they could stop a storm. They need to look to Jesus for help because there are some things that are beyond our abilities to do anything about it. And the big, bold, obvious example of this is what happens with Peter when Peter gets out of the boat. And I think it's really underlining this idea of where have you got to look for a solution? Because Peter's fine until he starts looking away from Jesus. When he starts thinking too much about the storm and what's going on, rather than looking to Jesus. There is a phrase in English, isn't there, where we will sink or swim. Somebody will sink or swim. Here it's sink or stand. Jesus is standing on the water. Peter initially is, but starts to sink when he takes his eyes off Jesus, when he starts to focus on the storm rather than Jesus. So in the everyday thing, the kind of mundane thing, which is something to eat, something that all of us do every day, eat something, in the everyday thing, or in the extraordinary, unusual thing, the storm, looking to Jesus is the thing to do. Looking to him to guide you, we might more naturally go to that in a crisis, but actually in the everyday as well. In just the day-to-day provision, we need to look to him as well. So what does it actually look like for us in 2020, let me get this right, 6? What does it look like for us to actually do this? Well, there's a clue in verse 31. So have a look with me at verse 31, halfway down the fourth column there. Peter is sinking in verse 30. He's afraid, begins to sink, cries out, which is a smart move, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You have little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? So what's the problem that Jesus identifies? He's allowing his faith to waver. He is doubting. So what does it look like for us to look to Jesus in 2026? Well, it's to put our faith in him, to trust him. And so we're going to want to do things or surround ourselves with things that are going to help strengthen our faith, not take our eyes off him. We're going to want to look for things that are going to help us to know Jesus better. So that might be reading his word. We, of course, do that here at church, but there's many people in church who do that at home as well. Some people might have some little system where they read a little bit of the Bible every day, even, and spend a little bit of time just pondering that and thinking about that. We can speak to him in prayer, of course, and you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a big formalized thing. It can be when you're just walking on the street, or can be short or long. We want to meet with others who will point us to Jesus and help us to get to know him better. And, of course, we can learn together, and that's one of the things we're doing now. But notice what verse 33 says the people do. When they climbed into the boat, the storm subsides. Then those who were in the boat worshipped Jesus. They worshipped him, and they said, "Truly you are the Son of God." Truly you are the Son of God. They're so amazed by what they've experienced in seeing Jesus walk on the water and then the storm subsiding, that their response is worship. They saw Jesus in a new light, so to speak. Just as an aside, just notice that the folk in the boat, they're not like Jonah in the boat. If you know the story of Jonah, Jonah's in a boat and ends up in a storm, and he's running away from God. He's been disobedient in being in the boat and being in the storm. These people, they're in a boat and they're in a storm, but they've actually done what Jesus told them to do. He said, cross over the lake. So storms can come. Storms don't just come because of disobedience, is the thing to notice. They were doing as Jesus told them to do. The storm came. God can have a purpose in a storm that comes our way. Well, more quickly, and just as we finish, the third thing is just to see Jesus and his character. I think it's hard to miss here. When we look at Jesus here, what do we see? What do we see? Well, we see his power and authority there. But if we think about his character, what's revealed about his character here? Well, in verse 14, we see that he sees the crowd, a lot of people wanting to be healed and things. In verse 14, he had compassion on them. Now, the word that's translated in English, compassion, in the original language, it's a very strong word. It's a sort of word that means you sort of feel something right inside. Not just sort of an idea in your head, you actually sort of feel it. And he had compassion on them. He doesn't want to send them away. He says, no, we're not going to do that. And he provides for them. And as I've already said, verse 20 says, they all ate and all were satisfied. And there's some leftovers as well. His provision for them is generous. So we see here Jesus' compassion, and that comes out many times as we see Jesus in the Gospels. He's compassionate towards people. I was trying to get a photo that captured the idea of compassion. It's very hard to capture that in a photo. Here's some people holding hands. But I don't think that really conveys it, does it? But Jesus is compassionate towards these people. But we also see not only his compassion, but also his mercy. Peter wants to come to Jesus by getting out of the boat and walking on the water. We're not quite sure what his motives were. He could have had sort of quite pure motives there. He might have had mixed motives. Could he have been showing off? Could he have been wanting to be a bit different to the other disciples? Not really clear, is it? But what is clear is it all goes wrong for Peter. And Jesus doesn't say, well, I told you so, or, you idiot. What does Jesus do? When Peter, who does a smart thing, cries out to Jesus, Jesus is merciful, doesn't he? Doesn't say, well, you got yourself into this mess, mate. He reaches out his hand and catches him. Later, when more ill people come, Jesus is healing more people. Jesus is full of compassion and mercy. But he does give Peter a gentle rebuke. Do you see that in verse 31? We've already thought about this, but you of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? He just gently helps Peter see what the problem was. It's not stern with him, I don't think, but he gently rebukes him, gently challenges him. So, we see here some of Jesus' character. It's hard to miss because it's so different to some of the characters we meet just in regular life. Sometimes there's not a lot of compassion or mercy or appropriate challenge to wrong behaviour. Well, having seen all these things, having seen what Jesus is able to do in the storm and when there was a need for food, having seen the supernatural nature of what he's doing, having seen his character, why would you look away to the storm rather than focus your view on Jesus? Do you remember at the start I said, I don't know what 2026 will hold for us. Could hold some great joys, could hold some hard things. But what a great way to start the year, being reminded to keep looking to Jesus. And that he's the smart place to look, whatever comes our way in 2026. Let me pray. Father, we thank you for this great reminder of how brilliant Jesus is. His power, his authority, but also his compassion and mercy. Father, I pray that you would help us to look to him this year. You continue to help us to learn more about him, to build our relationship with him. And Father, we thank you that church is a place that can help us in that. Father, I pray that you'd help all of us to grow in these things this year. Father, I pray that you'd help us to find our wisdom in Jesus. Amen.
Amen.